We're bringing you boots on the ground insight from the ranchers, conservationists, and partners who are helping to preserve the best of the Golden State for generations to come. Join the California Rangeland Trust for inspiring stories of resilience, innovation, and hope as we get tuned into the land.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of Season 4 of Tune Into the Land. I'm your host and CEO of the California Rangeland Trust, Michael Delbar. Before we dive in, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our loyal listeners. Season 4 has been filled with meaningful conversations, powerful stories from the land, and reminders of why the work we do to protect California's working rangeland matters more now than ever. As we close out the year, we wanted to take a moment to pause and celebrate a major milestone for the Rangeland Trust. In 2025, we reached the conservation of our 100th ranch, a remarkable achievement made possible by our ranching families, our partners, and supporters like you. And the momentum hasn't stopped. Not long after number 100, 2 more ranches have followed. So today, we stand at 102 ranches conserved, protecting more than 421,000 acres of rangeland across the Golden State. So it feels especially fitting to celebrate this moment with someone who knows the work inside and out, our newly elected board chair, Clayton Koopmann. Clayton comes from Sunol, California, where his family has stewarded the ranch for 6 generations. His roots in ranching, his long involvement with the Rangeland Trust, and now his leadership at the helm of our board make him the perfect guest to reflect on where we've been and where we're headed. Today, Clayton and I will look back on the Trust's successes, talk about his vision for the organization, and share some of the exciting things we have coming down the pipeline as we prepare for a new chapter. With that, I am pleased to bring you my conversation with Clayton Koopmann. I'd like to welcome Mr. Clayton Koopmann to the podcast. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about who Clayton Koopmann is, your daily life, work life, professional life. There's a lot to it, but why don't you kick us off with a little bit about that?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
The best way I could describe my daily life is pure chaos. Got a lot going on. My wife and I, we both work full time, run cows. We're spread out across 4 different counties, and we've got 2 feral ranch kids that we're chasing around all the time. They're 4 and 6 years old, and I think they participate in every sport known to man, and junior rodeos and everything else. So we're on the go nonstop, and we're sitting here in Reno right now. It seems like every time I go out of town, everything falls apart, and I've been on the phone all morning with cattle out and trying to put out fires from a distance. So that's pretty much my life in a nutshell.
Tell us a little bit more about the ranch, the Koopmann family ranch, and you're in Sunol. That's the headquarters.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yep. So we're the ranch we live on. The headquarters there's in Sunol. That ranch has been in the family since 1918. My family, they originally homesteaded in Dublin in the 1870s, and then moved over to the ranch there in Sunol in 1918. And so the family still runs a bunch of cows there, and we help out with that. And then Natalie and I lease a bunch of other ground, and like I said, we're spread out across 4 counties and run a lot of our own cattle. Primarily all cow calf and some replacement heifers. So that keeps us going. It's not enough to make a living, but it sure keeps us busy.
So what's it like ranching in the Bay Area? That's got to have some very unique challenges to it in itself. Ranching in California is a unique experience, but Bay Area's got to be that experience on steroids.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a unique experience. I get to several different states throughout the year and help people work cattle and brand calves and stuff. And it's a lot calmer environment. You know, you get to where we're at in the Bay Area, and you've got to time your travels to get from ranch to ranch, and based on traffic and commutes and stuff like that. And so we're either going real early or a lot of times late in the evening. Just the people we lease and graze from several different park districts. And so the ranches we have cattle on actually have public access with hikers and mountain bikers. And, there's one park that we've got it's not uncommon for them to have over 1,000 visitors a day, and they're out there with the cattle. So it definitely makes it challenging, to try and move cattle around, and you've got people standing on the trails or standing right in the gate taking pictures when you're trying to bring cows in. And I would venture to guess I probably deal with more cattle out on the roadway or cattle out where they're not supposed to be, just because people have a problem closing gates, or they like to prop gates open so they can ride their mountain bikes through. Had a bunch of issues with cut fences and, people just assuming they can go wherever they want to go, kind of that entitled feeling, which I'm all for sharing the rangeland with our urban neighbors. I think it's a great opportunity for them. But aside from the problems or the issues we deal with, grazing in an urban area, I look at it as an opportunity to reach out to some of those urban neighbors that they don't really understand grazing, or they don't have any exposure to it. And so we can kind of share our story. We try to be as transparent as possible and let them know, why the cattle are there, what the benefits of grazing are, really talk about some of the ecological benefits of the cattle being on the landscape. And so I look at it as a challenge, but also as an opportunity to kind of share the benefits of rangelands and what we do.
How's that received by the public?
In most cases, it's the people really enjoy seeing the cattle out there. They understand that they're there to graze for reduced fuel loads for fire protection. I mean, that's pretty clear, especially with the fires we've had in California the last 10 years. Funny story. I was horseback and I was by myself. I had a couple dogs with me and I had a bunch of cows I was pushing up out of this canyon, and this gentleman, and he's a couple miles into the park, and he's flagging me down, and I'm kind of thinking, well, what's this guy want, and he stops me and he says, hey, I noticed that there's some serpentine rocks up on top of this ridge, and it's the springtime, and he says, I just want to know, why aren't the cows up there grazing the grasses so that the wildflowers can come up? And it kind of caught me off guard. A guy, don't judge a book by its cover. A guy that looks like, he's in a gang in San Jose somewhere, and he has this knowledge of rangelands and serpentine rock outcroppings to realize that, we should be grazing them in the spring to reduce the annual grasses so that the flowers can come up. And I just thought, man, that made my day. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. But you run into a lot of stories like that and a lot of people like that. And it's, it makes us feel pretty good about what we're doing, that they understand. It's you run into stories like that, and it's pretty neat.
So the family has a long-standing history with the Rangeland Trust. How did you all first become involved with us?
That goes back to, I wasn't quite in diapers, but I was probably in grade school, and before the Rangeland Trust was the Rangeland Trust, my family had gotten hit with an inheritance tax bill of $750,000, and so I know my dad, growing up, I watched him struggle trying to figure out how he was going to save the ranch that had been, in the family for several generations, and that was about the time that I think CRT was founded, and my dad was one of the founding board members of the California Rangeland Trust, and served on the board for several years until I think he went into took the position as the CCA, California Cattlemen's Association president, and he stepped away from the Rangeland Trust, and I think that's about the time I went onto the board. So that was probably 10 or so years ago.
So what inspired you to take his seat? He said, son, got this position open, you need to do it? Or is this like something like, Dad, I'd like to do that. You're not going to be there.
Kind of like everything else around that outfit, I was voluntold.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I was probably younger and not quite in a position to take that role. But I thought, it was a great opportunity, and there's no better time than the present to get started. I value, the mission of the California Rangeland Trust. I see the value, and I see the ranchers that they've helped throughout the state. And I thought that, that's something, I care deeply about. the ranching industry, agriculture, and rangelands, and I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to step up and start to take a role and work with an organization that I really value their message and what they're trying to do, and I'm glad I did. It was a good move.
As being a rancher, how does that impact the work you're doing as a board member? How does that experience help guide your role as a director?
As a board member, I sit on several different boards. I'm on the Alameda County Fair Board and a couple others, and I've grown to value diversity on a board. I value different opinions and people from different backgrounds, and just like on the Rangeland Trust Board, there's some of us that have a strong background and knowledge of grazing and the cattle industry, and I think that's very important. But there's also some people that have a really strong background and knowledge and work in the financial sector, and I think you need to have a balance, and that works really well. Coming from the ranching background that I am, I think that affords me an opportunity to connect with some of our landowner partners and some of the ranchers throughout the state. Not only am I involved in the industry, but we also have easements on our ranch. So I've got that connection, and it makes it really easy to have conversations with some of the landowner partners, and we have that connection.
Well, you have that relatability and experience that you can talk to fellow ranchers. You're sharing the same challenges that they're facing and trying to stay in business in this state. And in this industry, and it's both are huge challenges. And having a conservation easement on your ranch, and the fact that it saved the family ranch. We hear you say that, we hear your family say that, and how important is that tool and your experience, firsthand experience with it, in working with other ranchers that are considering a tool like a conservation easement for their own property?
Yeah. Well, going back to the business climate in California, I think that could be a whole separate podcast.
Yes.
My message would be, you hear stories all the time about ranches being broken up and sold off. And 90% of the time it's because of inheritance taxes or, issues that people have had financially. A lot of times too, you'll see the younger generation coming up and they've seen their parents and grandparents struggle. And, that's just not something they want to do. They don't want to continue on with the ranch. They want to go have a town job. And, I would say that in the right situation and for a lot of people, placing a conservation easement on their ranch is a great opportunity. It's going to achieve their goals and financially might put them in a position to preserve that property and the value of that property. Not necessarily in a financial way, but to preserve that open space, to preserve the heritage and the history of the ranch. I'd say easements probably aren't for everybody. It's not something that's forced, but if you're in a position where you could use the funding, or if you want to protect your property in perpetuity, I mean, there's not a better opportunity than to work with the California Rangeland Trust. And really, they're geared to working for ranchers and working with ranchers to preserve those working lands. And I see a lot of value in that for the right people.
Keep ranchers ranching.
That's right.
So you have just completed 2 years as the vice chair of the Rangeland Trust Board of Directors. And as of yesterday, you have been elected as the chair of the board, incoming chair.
I was voluntold once again, but yeah, we're here.
Well, we're glad to have voluntold you to do this. So what's that personally mean to you to lead this organization?
It's something I've been working towards, I guess, since I began my tenure on the board with the Rangeland Trust. I value the opportunity. I take great pride in the organization and our relationships we've built with ranchers and funders and conservation groups throughout the state. I'd like to continue to foster those relationships and further develop them, build new relationships. I'm excited for the opportunity, and the staff at Rangeland Trust is second to none. And they make serving in this position a pleasure and really easy to do.
What do you see as your priorities for the next 2 years?
Close as many easements as possible and protect as many acres as possible.
I like that one.
That's, I think, I'd like to work with staff and try and secure, some additional funders and funding partners for the organization so we can close more easements. We've got a list of over 100 ranching families and partners that are looking for easements.
About 300,000 acres worth.
300,000 acres worth. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that are looking for help or kind of waiting on Rangeland Trust for that help. And I think the biggest challenge for us is securing the funds to make those easements happen. And I think, that's priority one, is to get more of those closed.
Well, we did have a recent milestone. We did hit our 100th family ranch that we conserved last month. We are now at 102. We've closed 7 easement projects this year. We're just north of 421,000 acres permanently protected across the state. Like we said, we have at least 300,000 acres in the queue, just waiting, families waiting to do the right thing with their family ranches, with those working landscapes, protect them forever. And, it's a huge lift. And having the strong leadership that you're going to provide, because I can say that with confidence because I've watched you in the last number of years and in your role as the vice chair, that there's a lot of optimism about how we can get there and get more of those ranches conserved. Any key initiatives that you want to put in place during your tenure as a chair?
Well, Michael, I've been the chair for about 20 hours now, and I've thought about it a little bit. I think the organization's in a really, really good place right now. I've watched the growth over the last 2 to 3 years. We've brought in staff and we're fully staffed now. I think we've efficiency wise, we've closed more easements in the last couple of years than we have, historically, and we're trending upward and becoming more, making more progress. I'd like to continue that and provide support where I can to staff.
Well, you mentioned in our conversation yesterday, you mentioned our strategic plan. And when we were setting the goals for projects to close. Yeah. You remember that conversation? It was last night, so I don't know if I remember it very well, if you remember it, but
I remember it very well. During our strategic planning session a couple of years ago or last year, I'd asked what is our average, how many easements do we close a year? And it was 5. The target number was 5. And I said, well, you know what? We've got more staff. We've got more resources now. Why don't we make it 10? And everybody kind of laughed at me, and there's no way. And I think we're just at the beginning of December this year, and we've closed 7 already with the potential to get to 10 for the year.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that was a joke, and it's not. I mean, the staff here is very professional, very diligent, and very efficient. And I'm very proud to see the progress we've made this year and the achievements we've reached. And, if we can do it this year, I think we can do more next year.
Well, frankly, 10's not enough. And we have projects that are teed up and funding identified and the work is done. What holds us up from getting more of those done is the bureaucracies. And when you're looking at public funding, it's a challenge. And when you're dealing with multiple public funders on any one project, that is a huge time challenge.
Yeah.
And we're seeing new challenges and new issues come forward that complicate this even more. One of the conversations that we're hearing more is from leaders in the state of, we're using public funds to acquire these easements. Public should have access to these lands, which is really interesting for the state to say, because there are state lands that don't have public access.
Most of them, or
Right.
a lot of them, yeah.
So to require private landowners to allow unfettered public access is a non-starter, and that's just not going to get these lands conserved.
100%.
So what we really need to do is look at what's the public benefit. And that public benefit is not limited to public access. One of the areas that we demonstrated the immense public benefit, we did an ecosystem services study with UC Berkeley. We asked them to do the work. They did the study in 2020, and they looked at 306,000 acres of our portfolio and determined that for every dollar that went into acquisition of those conservation easements, it returned $3.47. Now, we're in Reno. I'd love to put every dollar in my pocket on the blackjack table and get $3.50 back. I'd have a nice evening. So that's a huge ROI.
Yeah.
Above and beyond that is the benefit to all those ecosystem services, things like food and fiber production, the open space, the clean air, clean water, the wildlife habitat. Those benefits that benefit everybody in California, just on 300,000 acres, was $1.44 billion a year. That seems like a pretty big public benefit for that investment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like you said, an ROI of 300% is unbelievable. And it's why do people live in California? Well, that's another loaded question, but no, I mean, people are in California and they enjoy the climate and the beautiful weather, but it's the view sheds and the aesthetics of the state. I mean, it really is. You get outside of the urban centers like San Francisco and LA, and it's a beautiful state. The coastal rangelands to the Sierras and the mountains, and by conserving these properties in perpetuity, they may not have access to go in there, but they get the benefit of those view sheds. And I'd much rather look at golden rolling hills in California than a subdivision up there. And I think our urban neighbors feel the same way.
This is a gratuitous plug for a wonderful documentary. You just can't see them from the road. If you haven't seen it, I know you've seen it because you're the poster child for it. But for listeners who haven't seen it, you really do need to see it. But you made a comment in that film that I every time I hear you watch the film and hear you say it, I smile because I've said the same thing as well. And it has to do with that open space and why it's there. And it's not just there because of the landowners thought, I just want to provide an open space. Tell us a little bit about how important that is and why it's there. Why is that open space there?
Well, I wouldn't say the open space, but the wildflowers, the wildlife, the habitat, that's there and present on those lands due to hundreds of years of stewardship and good grazing practices by the landowners. And, if you take that away, you're going to lose that value. You look at lands that are maybe adjacent to those that aren't grazed, and you're not going to see the wildlife. You're not going to see the raptors. You're going to have, that habitat value is not there. You're going to have thatch and grass and stickers and weeds and a fire risk. And the stewardship, the value in the stewardship of those lands provided by the landowners and the cattle ranchers throughout the state is invaluable. It really is. And I know we put a dollar value on it and it sounds really high and it is high, but I'd venture to guess it's probably higher than that.
Oh, absolutely. Those lands are there also, besides of all that stewardship, it's because they're economically viable. And if we take that economic value out of that and that rancher can no longer afford to stay in business, we lose all that too. And that's part of a message that some of our policymakers, I think, lose sight of because of that disconnect that they have from the land. When we're only 2% of the population, and we're even less in the population of our elected officials.
Yeah, a word that gets thrown around a lot, and I don't really like the word a whole lot, is sustainability. And you start looking at what is the definition of sustainability, and particularly when it applies to agricultural production or ranching or farming. And when you have families that have been on the same land, grazing the same property for 100 plus years, 150 years, That's sustainability. They've weathered the challenges, fires, droughts, the bureaucracy in the state of California, the poor business climate that we face, and we're still here. That's sustainability.
Absolutely.
And my goal is to leave the landscape in better condition ecologically for my children and for my grandchildren when I'm done. And, if you take care of the land, it'll take care of you. If you graze it the right way, if you take care of and protect the soils, protect the water resources, if you take care of those lands, they're going to continue to give back. And that's sustainability to me.
That's an extremely important message, because especially in the political environment we have now, where issues like climate change and the impacts that some feel come from agriculture, cows get blamed unfairly for the world's ills in terms of climate. And hearing those comments all the time get frustrating. It really does. And we know that we hear a lot about the need for regenerative agriculture. You hear these buzzwords all the time: regenerative, sustainable. And what it comes down to is these ranchers are doing this work day in and day out, and they're continuing to produce a safe, affordable, healthy, nutritious product, and all the byproducts that come from that, all the food, all the fiber production. And they're doing it despite all those challenges that you mentioned, and they're staying in business. That is absolutely the definition of sustainability.
And we're not getting rich doing it.
No.
We do it because we love what we do. We love the land. We love taking care of it, and we love the animals. We're not getting rich. There's nothing better than riding out horseback in the dark and watching the sun come up in the morning. Watching an eagle fly out of a tree, or being able to load the kids up in the pickup and drive around and see deer and see bobcats, and they get it. And that, to me, there's nothing more rewarding than taking my kids out, and they say, we want to go see nature. We want to look at nature. And to me, I'm doing something right. They get it. They know, they understand why we do what we do. The political climate in California, and I mean, really throughout the country, it's pretty divisive. I mean, you've got, one side and you've got the other side. And you start talking about land management, about stewardship, about the environment. I think we have a lot more in common with the other side than anybody realizes. And we want to protect the land. We want to protect the wildlife, the habitat. And I think they want the same thing. It's a matter of finding that common ground. And I think we have a lot more in common than people think. And I think there's room to grow those relationships and moving forward. I think there's opportunity there. It's just a matter of reaching that olive branch across the aisle and
telling our story
together and telling our story. And that's the thing. We don't need to just share our story with other ranchers. We need to broadcast it far and wide. It needs to go to the urban centers and our urban neighbors, so they understand the value of what we're doing. And politically too. I mean, to share it with the other side of the aisle and let them know, hey, we're on the same team. We have the same goals in common. Let's work together and figure out how to make the best of these opportunities.
If we don't tell our story, it'll be told for us.
And not the right way.
That's
right. We need to be proactive and not reactive.
So we talked about keeping ranchers ranching. That's the heart of what Rangeland Trust does. It's in your heart and your desire and stuff that you work for every day. Rangeland Trust started a programs department where we've heard from our landowner partners that they've conserved the land, but they want to do more. There's more out there. How do we as landowners find those resources? Help us get connected to that. How have you seen the success of the programs department in the last couple of years? And in your interactions with landowner partners or just ranchers that are out there, what's their appetite for more information with all of the technology, all of the programs that are out there? There's a lot to wade through. how is the program's aspect of Rangeland Trust beneficial to those landowners?
I think there's, everywhere you go, you start talking about Rangeland Trust, and you run into a few people that are familiar with the trust, and then you run into a lot of people that aren't or haven't heard about it, which surprises me a little bit. But it's a great opportunity, and you start explaining to them, what we do as an organization, and immediately there's an interest. They're excited about it. They want to learn more about it. As far as our landowner partners, there's the same issue that gets a lot of people in trouble is, and this is an example of one of the programs, is estate planning. And without estate planning, you get into a spot where you're hit with an inheritance tax. And that's where a lot of family ranches run into a problem. And over the last year or two, Rangeland Trust has been provided an opportunity for some workshops and training in estate planning, which that's just one example, but to where you can help these landowner partners try and be sustainable, try and hold on to these ranches and be proactive and get out in front of things before there's a problem. In terms of ecological value and grazing management practices, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Grazing management practices that benefit the landscape as we transition from, say, an older generation to a younger generation that maybe hasn't been around it and been around the grazing as much, and they're trying to take over, or it's starting to kind of fall in their lap. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to help educate and work with them to do the right thing. And we're starting to see more of that and more interest in that. Aside from the ranching side of things, I think some I don't want to say classes, but opportunities for sharing our story and sharing the benefits of grazing, whether it's through school programs, offering events we've done, we've aired, you just can't see them from the road in just about every corner of the state, I think, and I've been to downtown San Francisco twice for viewings and just to see the people there that have an interest in being able to share our story. And then seeing the follow-up afterwards, it's something that they may have not known about ahead of time. But once they see the video or they hear the story, they have an interest and want to follow up. And I think being able to share that story in those urban centers is really important. And we could probably do more there to expand that.
The programs department, we've been able to grow that because of that desire from our landowner partners and just ranchers in general, wanting to find out more, to learn more. And we gone from a staff of one in that department to now 3. And it's been, the demand has been incredible. One of the things that we're getting ready to launch in 26 is a resource hub. It'll be a place where information, everything from Farm Bill programs, NRCS programs, RCD stuff, anything that information on technology, virtual fencing type things,
fencing, yeah.
Wildfire, fuel management, all of those issues in one spot where a landowner can access that and get more information, because that's what we're finding is really needed out there. Is they want the tools. Landowners are looking for those tools. They're hungry for them to where they can do more. They may or may not have conserved the ranch. If they have, that's wonderful. Now, what else can they do on top of that?
We're definitely in a technology age, and I think having the opportunity to learn more about the technology that's out there and apply it to the landscape is you're seeing more and more desire for that and to try and make things as easy as possible. I mean, shoot, I could take my cell phone and turn pumps on and off on water tanks and check my water troughs and it makes it pretty convenient. And like you said, I think, yeah, there's more and more interest in that. And if there's any landowner partners out there that are listening, I hope there are, if there's things that you have an interest in, I'd say reach out to the Rangeland Trust and see if we can put something together, whether it's, the electric fence or not electric fencing. What do you call the collars on the cows, the virtual fencing.
Yeah.
But if there's an interest, I mean, reach out and we'd be happy to help. So, Michael, on that note, the Rangeland Trust just hired a new position, a conservation technical assistance position. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So, yes, we are really excited to create this position. We just brought the person on. It's Sarah Leal. She is based out of the northern part of the state, but will be working statewide. She has great experience with NRCS, and it's a conservation technical assistance. And that role is to be out there working with landowners. So she's going to help ranchers get through programs like NRCS's EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program. That's one. CSP is another. The programs that are really valuable, really important, but it takes some knowledge of the program to get through the application and that process. So Sarah's job is going to be helping these folks maneuver through that and get these programs implemented on their properties.
Yeah. And they're both really valuable programs. The EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, provides cost share opportunities for landowners to install infrastructure, whether it's, wildlife friendly water systems or fencing and other opportunities on their lands. And, the conservation stewardship program, we participate in both, but provides an opportunity to receive compensation for ecological improvements and benefits you provide on the landscape throughout the year, whether it's rotational grazing or a more intense grazing regime, bringing your infrastructure up to be more wildlife friendly. So those are very, very valuable programs, and having her on board, I think, is going to be great in helping our ranching partners, maximize the benefits that they can get out of their lands. So that's exciting.
We've got a little bit of a delay getting her on board because the governmental shutdown, but now that that's over and we're back to full speed ahead, and she's just getting started, and we're really excited.
No, that's great to hear. And I think our goal is to, we want to see our landowner partners and ranchers succeed and do a good job, and whatever resources we can provide to help them with that. I mean, that's what the goal is here.
Yeah, we are very excited for it. So we've had a great year. Close like we talked about. We've closed 7 projects so far. Some more potential by the end of the year.
Hit a major milestone.
Major milestone.
Actually, 2. Did we go over 400 this year, or was that last year?
We broke 400 last year. We hit that 100th ranch this year. But so what's the next goal? Next goal, is it 200 ranches? Is it 500,000 acres? Whatever that goal is, we've got the momentum going. And how do you see us continuing that to hit those next milestones, whether it's the 500,000 acre mark, which should be, I think, would be the next one on the list, because that's the one I think that's in our sights.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's definitely a big goal. I like the 100 more ranches goal a lot better. I've got 2 years as chair and I got to talk to staff, but I think we can hit 100 ranches in 2 years.
Challenge accepted.
All right.
But you got to help us.
That's why I'm here. But no, in all reality, I think, just over the last couple years, I think the increase in staff, there's a lot more efficiency. There's a lot of excitement about the opportunity for easements. I think a program that was handed down by our governor would be the 30 by 30. But I think California Rangeland Trust has a place there. I mean, we've already protected 400,000 acres, and we've talked about the ecosystem services that those provide. And I think if we can get those recognized through that program, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for growth. And I think that could help us, get closer to that 100 more ranches and 500,000 acre goal.
Well, you know what? It is definitely achievable. And just with those ranching families that are waiting to do it, that second 100 ranching families are already there.
Yeah.
They've already stepped up. There's already 300,000 acres there, so we can blow past the 500 mark. Maybe we can hit the 600 mark. We can hit the 700,000 acre mark.
Don't stop there. Let's just go to 1 million.
Let's go. You mentioned 30 by 30.
They always say, let's go. Yeah.
You mentioned the 30 by 30. There's 4 million acres. The state's 4 million acres shy of hitting that goal.
Yeah.
And we're going to be in 2026 here before long. That means 4 years to hit 4 million acres. The 300,000 plus acres that we can contribute would be a big shot in the arm for them. What's stopping us is the funding. So there's a lot of great conversation about the need to hit it. But if the funds aren't there, the money's not put behind the effort, it's going to make it really hard to get there. So if the funding's available, we have the capacity, we have the dedicated staff, we've got the ability and the knowledge and the skill to get this done. And most importantly, we've got the landowners wanting to do it.
Right.
So mix all that together, just give us the funds. We will hit those marks, those milestones, without a doubt by 2030.
And I have to say, as chair of the Rangeland Trust Board, I have more optimism right now, and I'm more excited right now than I think I've ever been serving on the board, because I see the opportunity that's out there moving forward, and if the stars align, I think there's an opportunity to put a big dent in that list in the next couple of years.
Well, let's do it. Clayton, thank you for taking time. I know your schedule is extremely busy, and got a chance to pull you aside from the kids and the convention and all the meetings going on to share with our listeners a little bit more about who you are and your visions as chair for the next 2 years. And we're very glad to have you on board as our new leader. And thank you for everything you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you. And thank you for the brief break from my kids.
You're welcome. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Clayton. As we head into the holiday season, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to all of our ranching families, partners, and supporters. The work of conserving California's working lands is only possible because of the dedication, trust, and generosity of people like you. If you're inspired by the stories you hear on this podcast and the impact of our work, we invite you to support our mission by making a year-end gift at rangelandtrust.org. From our family to yours, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we wish you the best as we head into 2026. We'll see you all next season.